Einstein supposedly had an IQ of 160. But what does this number even mean? Is he twice as smart as someone with an IQ of 80? No, and that's what many people get wrong about IQ. Now, before we get into IQ itself, we need to take a step back and ask a much more basic question. What even is intelligence? The thing we ultimately try to score. If you think about it for a moment, it's surprisingly hard to define. Is intelligence just cognitive ability? But what does that include? Is it the ability to memorize a long poem? Well, that sounds like memory. But then again, isn't memory a cognitive ability? Is it being good at maths or chess? And what about creativity? Is that part of intelligence too? As you can see, it gets messy very quickly. Psychologist Edwin Boring once put it rather bluntly: intelligence is what the tests test. And while that sounds circular, it's also kind of the practical reality. We measure intelligence with intelligence tests, and then define intelligence based on what those tests measure. Things like inductive reasoning, pattern recognition, and problem solving. So how do IQ tests actually work now? The basic idea is surprisingly simple. You're given a set of tasks with increasing difficulty, and we measure how many you can solve. You end up with a raw test score. And this is where the magic happens. The raw test score is then translated into an IQ score. Every IQ test is constructed so that results follow a normal distribution, the familiar bell curve or Gaussian distribution. You see this kind of distribution all over human biology. If you measured the height of everyone on Earth, it would look like this. Most people cluster around the average, with fewer and fewer people at the extremes. The same idea was applied to intelligence. IQ tests are built so that the average score is 100 and the standard deviation, the average distance people are from that mean, is 15. That means about 68% of people fall between 85 and 115, which is considered the normal or average range. This also leads to some misconceptions about IQ sometimes, because an IQ of 90 is still considered average IQ. I mean, technically it's below the mean of 100 of course, but it's still well in this average range. The value of 160 for Einstein, which keep in mind is just an estimate, he never really took an intelligence test, is all the way to the side. Only 0.003% of people have an IQ of 160 or higher. This is only 1 in 31,500 people. Does that mean that Einstein was twice as intelligent as someone with an IQ of 80? No, not at all. IQ is an interval scale, not a ratio scale. There is no true 0 point, unless you're dead maybe. It's the same reason you can't say that 20 degrees Celsius is twice as hot as 10 degrees, which becomes even clearer when you convert those temperatures into Fahrenheit. Both of these scales are not absolute. IQ tells you how far someone is from the average, not how much intelligence they have in absolute terms. For a long time, psychologists argued about whether intelligence is actually one single ability at all, or whether it's just a collection of separate skills. Vocabulary, spatial reasoning, logic puzzles, pattern recognition, these all feel different. So do they really measure the same thing? Here's the interesting part. When psychologists looked at the data, a consistent pattern kept showing up. People who are good at one kind of mental task, say vocabulary, also tend to be better at others, like spatial reasoning. This pattern was first identified over 100 years ago by the psychologist Charles Spearman, who proposed the idea of a single underlying factor behind all cognitive performance, the G factor, or general intelligence. This is the foundation of the single IQ score, one number meant to summarize a person's overall cognitive ability. So what is intelligence not? People often hear intelligence and immediately think of creativity, emotional intelligence, social skills, or being good with people. All those things absolutely matter in real life, often more than IQ, but they are not the same construct. Creativity, for example, is only weakly linked to IQ once you pass a basic threshold. Emotional intelligence is even more controversial. Depending on how you define it, it often overlaps with personality traits like empathy, self-control or social awareness rather than cognitive ability. And generally in psychology, emotional intelligence is actually neither a well-defined nor widely accepted construct. That of course doesn't mean that these skills are less important, it just means they measure something different. IQ is not a score of your worth, your potential, or how successful or happy you'll be. It's a fairly narrow attempt to quantify one specific thing: how efficiently you can reason, learn, and solve abstract problems compared to others. And once you understand that limitation, IQ becomes far less mystical and far more useful.